with words. They are all based on one fundamental principle from 1957. You shall know a word by the company it keeps. This is the basis for all natural language processing. Computers can't read. Computers have no comprehension skills whatsoever. All they know is mathematics. And so when we try to teach a computer how to work with language, we're really trying to teach it statistics and probabilities. What are the words around a word? What do they mean? For example, if I say I'm brewing the tea, what am I talking about? I'm probably talking about a beverage, right? A beverage made from a certain type of plant and the process by which I work with it. If I say I'm spilling the tea, this is different, right? This is jargon. It means gossip. And so it's almost the same set of words, but because of the way we use language, the propensity for language, the meaning changes. So if we understand that, we can understand how large language models work, because we can start to understand that words mean different things based on their context. And that is the most important thing to know about large language models. It's all just probability. Word order matters too. If I say I'm brewing the tea, it's pretty straightforward who the subject is, what the object is, and what's happening. If I say the tea I'm brewing, right, this is a different sentence. Right? It means functionally about the same thing, but in the English language, this changes what the focus of the sentence is about. It's more about the tea and not me, the person, and what it is that I'm doing. If I say brewing I'm tea the, this doesn't make a lick of sense in English. Right? It's same words. Probabilistically, it's the same words, but they're different because of the order in which they occur. This sentence does make sense in Arabic and Gaelic and Irish, where they have a verb, subject, object format, but it doesn't make any sense in English. And so part of the challenges of large language models is also to understand what language are you working in and how does that language function. So how do these things work? Well, the short answer is like this. This is probably the least helpful answer, however, because it is just a system architecture diagram. What large language models do, or what companies who make them do, is take an enormous amount of text from the internet. The company Yolothra AI has scraped about 800 million megabytes of text from clinical research papers, news outlets, and things. OpenAI's ChatGPT has scraped even more. They have scraped several billions of pounds of text out there. Everything that they can get their hands on that they're not going to get sued for immediately. So reviews, fan fiction, all sorts of crazy stuff online. And all they're trying to do is gather up all the text possible that they can have access to so that they can start assigning probabilities to it. These are some reviews. These are from Amazon and a few other sites. And you can see I'm brewing the tea occurs a fairly frequent number of times, right? You can see that it's in this review here, it's in that review here. And as part of this, as part of constructing this model, you can also see there are words that go with this phrase, right? We talk about I'm brewing the tea, you're talking about how it tastes, how it smells, certain types of words and phrases, styles of tea, herbs. Again, this is all just probability. We're trying to now build associations in words. You do this all the time naturally, right? If you were a person from England, you would say, God save the, and then up until last year, the last word in that phrase would be the Queen, right? Now it's no longer the case. But you have known probabilities based on frequency. If you're an American, you say, I pledge allegiance to the, right? It's not a rutabaga. Probably not. But that's how probability works. We do this all the time. Where this changes is in what the machines do. So the machines, again, they can't read. So what they do is instead they assign values to each of the words that occur in all these texts that they've been scraping, millions and millions and millions of pages. Here's a very short example. I'm brewing the tea. You assign a numeric value to each of these words. And then when you see them in other cases, the number stays the same, the sequence changes. Again, machines can't comprehend, but what they do is they just take these reviews, for example, and break these into all these different numbers, and then we start looking for probabilities. Right? So that when somebody says, I'm brewing the, based on all the language that's consumed so far, what is the logical next word in this phrase, in the sentence? Well, there's probably a bunch, right? They're based on the dating script. And each of these has a probability. Each of these has a probability that is based on context. So part of working with large language models is understanding what probabilities you want to invoke. It's a technique called prompt engineering. When you're working in these systems, let's go ahead and see and just pull one up here. Escape PowerPoint. All these things are just doing is regurgitating based on the amount of information that you have and what it had learned about. This is pretty good. Right? This is based on a lot of publicly available information. And the more frequent and common a phrase is used, the easier it is for the machine to put something together. Right? The more obscure or arcane something is, the harder it is for these machines to do what we want them to do because they don't have nearly as much knowledge to associate with those words.
So Chris, all the blogging that we've been doing since 2006 has basically been feeding ChatGPT.
Among other things. I mean, we've been feeding Google since that long, but these language models now are starting to consume a lot of that information as well. Okay. So with prompt engineering, again, you know a word by a company it keeps. When you write a prompt, like write a paragraph about B2B marketing strategy, right, it's going to spit out something fairly generic because I didn't give it much to work with. Remember, it's association. So it comes up with a reasonably okay, kind of bland paragraph. If I lengthen that, say, write a paragraph about B2B marketing strategy with an emphasis on email marketing and lead generation, what it comes up with now is more specific because it has more words to work with in the initial prompt, and it will narrow those probabilities. Just like if I say I'm brewing the tea, and my previous sentence is about a tea house, right, it's going to come up with completions that make a lot more sense because it knows what guardrails I want. So when we're writing to talk with doing these prompts, we are putting guardrails on. The guardrails are the words we use in the prompts. If I say, write a paragraph about B2B marketing strategy with an emphasis on email marketing and lead generation, focus on the reduction of churn and increased audience loyalty, include details about marketing automation and lead scoring, write with professional tone of voice. Now there's a lot more guardrails. And the more guardrails you put on these prompts, the better the output gets. Right? So the text that it's coming up with now is a lot more useful and focused because I gave it a lot more to work with. I said, okay, these are the things that I want you to focus on. You can also tell it, these are things do not focus on. Again, making these things work is all about just knowing the company and the words that you want to keep. So let's take a look at a couple of use cases, some abridged use cases. This is one I said, you will act as a blogger. You have expertise in blogging, content creation, long-form content, content marketing, and content for SEO. Again, guardrails. I'm trying to tell it what to focus on. You have subject matter expertise in statistics, data science, machine learning, and supervised learning. Your first task is to draft a 4-part outline for the following question. How do you build a predictive analytics algorithm? And what it spits out is credible. So this style of prompt is sort of what we call the role prompt. You're going to be this type of person. And the reason this prompt works, again, those guardrails, the more I say, you're going to be focusing on content marketing, content for SEO. It knows then what words to associate with it. Right? If I had said you're going to write a biography or you're going to write some fan fiction, it's going to change what words get associated with that and what it spits out. You're an expert social media manager. You're skilled at crafting social media posts that garner high engagement on services like Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And your capacity, so on and so forth. Write some summaries for this text. So again, summarization is one of the most powerful things this software can do. If you take information that already exists but maybe is not in great format, you can have it summarize and condense it down. So one of my favorite things to do with these tools, I use voice recorders and voice recording apps. And I will, as I'm driving around, just sort of foam at the mouth and rant. And the automated transcripts I get back, kind of what you can see here at the bottom of the screen, these are legible, they're understandable, but they're not exactly what I'd call publication ready. Right? There's a lot of and filler and occasional distraction. But I can take the automated text that these things create and feed it into a system like ChatGPT and say, I want you to revise this. I want you to rewrite this. I want you to make it less, angry man yelling at cloud, and more something ready for a publication. And that's what these tools are really good at. It's the phrase GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. And what that means is that these tools are good at creating, but they're really good at revising. They're really good at rewriting content because in a lot of ways they don't have to work nearly as hard to just rephrase things as they do to come up with something net new. Another example, I told it, given a piece of text, give me the big 5 personality scores of the author based on several thousand words of text. And so we came up with an explanation of these psychological scores. If you believe in sort of the big 5 methodology, this is a handy way to evaluate text and understand the personality of the author at the time. Here's an example. I said you are an expert programmer in the programming language R, and I gave this long use case of what I want the software to do, and it writes the code for me, which is an enormous time saver if anyone codes. It will get your code about 90-ish, 95% correct. The last 10% still doesn't work. Yeah.
Does it matter if you say expert or not?
It does not matter.
Oh, okay. I was just curious because you kept saying you're an expert social media manager, you're an expert something. Like if you say novice, is it going to give you a crap output?
No. I use that just for my own natural language instruction because I want those keywords, tidyverse and R and shiny apps and stuff like that. You could actually just list those words out without any proper grammar at all, and it would still function just about the same. It's more for our use as humans to look at the prompt and go, okay, well, this is what you're trying to get the machine to do. It's all word frequency. So as long as you get the right words, prompt engineering, if you think about it, is kind of like SEO in a lot of ways. It's just prompt optimization. What are the words and phrases that I need to have that are relevant, that will put guardrails on the machine's output? So yeah, you don't need to use the word expert. I just like it because it looks nice. It will write code. It writes about 90-ish% of the code correctly. This is one of the challenges with the software. It gets it mostly right, but mostly right does not mean it runs, particularly computer code. Right? It has to be 100% correct. So you still need some subject matter expertise to be able to get it to do what you want 100% of the time. You have to go look at the code and go, okay, well, clearly you missed something here, or this makes no sense. But conversely, you will also do things in ways that you normally wouldn't. So you will learn from it as you work with it.
How does it compare to Stack Overflow?
So Stack Overflow and GitHub's bots are, in the previous version of ChatGPT, they were better. In the current version, the GPT 3.5 Turbo, it's better. It's gotten better, which is alarming. Part of the reason is because it has what it's called reinforcement learning. So every time you create an output and you don't make changes to that output, it essentially interprets it like, okay, I got it right. And so over time, the model basically is learning along the way and improving very, very rapidly.
Chris?
Yes?
Will this retrieve relevant quotes for you or case studies or examples?
It will do examples and templates. It will not. It doesn't retrieve anything. Part of the challenge of a large language model is it's not like a search engine where it goes up and finds new stuff. It is constructing stuff from what it knows. So, will it be able to create something that is a solid template? Absolutely. In fact, I've had it. One of my examples in here is I gave it a really badly written NDA that somebody sent me, and I said, I'm not signing this because whoever wrote this it was an idiot. And the guy was like, oh, well, I kind of wrote it from copying and pasting it from the internet. I said, I can tell.
Can I follow up to that?
Yeah.
So you said it only writes things based on what it knows. How often does it update what it knows? To me, that would be, if it's constantly doing that, it functions somewhat like a search engine.
It's somewhat like a search engine.
Yeah.
The core of GPT 3.5 Turbo is a knowledge base that ends at the end of 2021.
Okay.
There have been 7 updates to the model since then. They're smaller updates based on the feedback people give. It is due for a factual update sometime in Q1 or Q2 of this year when GPT-4 gets released. But it is a fairly slow release cycle, so it's about a year out of date.
But it must be a huge undertaking to make that update.
Absolutely, I mean, you're talking about hundreds of millions of
Like
pages
100 million, so
of great text, right? So I had it revise this NDA and come up with a better version of it. I said, tell me the things that are missing from this NDA and rewrite it. And so we rewrote it and saved some time. Writing mission statements, doing search engine optimization, keyword lists. I gave it some background, said, give me some suggested keywords. And then you feed these into like your SEO tool of choice and get your keyword scores to make improvements. Let's see. Writing privacy policies, GDPR compliant policies. Again, you should have some subject matter expertise. The tool gets 90-95% correct, which again, with law is something you probably, 95% is probably not good enough. There's always that one thing that causes you, but it gets you 95% of the way there. This affects any industry that uses language. So if you use words, which is pretty much most industries, this software will have some impact on what you do. There are risks inherent to this. Again, these models, and this is true across the spectrum, because OpenAI is not the only company that has one of these. There are many of these. They are trained and they are built on the language that is available publicly. Now, the old joke is, think of the average person and realize 50% of the population is dumber than that, right? Which is mathematically true. OpenAI talks about, we found evidence of bias in our models, right? Say, we found evidence that says our models more strongly associate European American names with positive sentiment when compared to African American names and negative stereotypes with regard to black women. Right? That's because of the text that went in. As these models learn, they are picking up our biases. They are picking up our flaws as human beings. It's one of the reasons why some companies, like Yolother AI, restrict the text they scrape. Like they say, we're not going to go out to the broad internet because the broad internet is basically a sewer. So let's stick with the Library of Congress, perhaps, and things like that. But you have to be aware that these models are not something you just kind of fire and forget. You have to be constantly checking their output to make sure that there's not doing something you would not want them doing. Now here's where it gets interesting. Everything that people have done so far has been in this lovely chat interface. And there are a gazillion and a half experts who all ran out of money doing crypto, so now they're AI experts talking about ChatGPT. And everyone's talking about, here's how you use these prompts to shorten your work cycle, make yourself more efficient, etc. This is not the end game. This is the playground for humans to toy with the model. The end game is building software with the underlying model. Right? If you're familiar with the software development lifecycle, when you're writing these prompts to make the machine do something interesting, you are more or less doing the first 3 stages of software development. And now, 2 weeks ago now, OpenAI opened up its API, its application programming interface, to ChatGPT to say, okay, now you can write software that will connect to this and let your software do the work. So, for example, this is the sort of the programming interface to test these things. It's very similar. You will act as a blogger. There's the predictive outline. Same prompt as earlier, but now I can say I want to run this inside of the R program environment or Python. Instead of creating one blog post, I can just rerun this software 1,000 times or 1,000,000 times and generate millions and millions of pieces of content. Right? Once you figure out a prompt that works for you, once you figure out a prompt that does something that you think is valuable or important to your job, you can now build software that does it at scale. And that's the value of of what's happening. That's the way you're going to make your money. If you're good at prompts, building a good prompt, you are a developer. Right? You've got a working prompt like, hey, take this YouTube subtitles file and turn it into an article. Or summarize this text, or rewrite this for comedy, or take any of the prompts that people have played with. Now you turn it into software in production at much, much bigger scale. Which means that a lot of the things that people have been talking about, like is this going to take jobs and stuff, yes, it will. There's really no debate about that. For those of you who are marketers, what is the impact going to be on marketing? Well, we've already seen Microsoft rolled out their integration into Bing with the ChatGPT, and it was a bit of a rocky rollout, but it is functional in production. This is changing how people search, because now instead of having to sift through page after page of information, it just summarizes the information for you. Now you can learn more, like clicking on any of those results, Most people don't. Most people are okay with the answer that they get and they move on with their day. What that means is that for things like organic search, if you do SEO, a big chunk of your unbranded organic search is going to go away. Now, where can I learn more about B2B marketing? This is the ChatGPT native interface. Here's all the industry publications and blogs. There's not a single clickable link in here. And so if you are relying on people finding your website through search and visiting it, when they're using these native models, it very rarely makes any kind of link-based recommendation. Occasionally it will do that if it's about something that's branded. So branded search, even in the ChatGPT native model, still does have clickable links. So your first task as a marketer, if you're doing anything with search, is to go into Search Console or Bing Webmaster Tools or whatever your engine of choice is, and look at the percentage of unbranded organic search that comes to your website. Whatever that percentage is, whether it's 5% or 95%, realize that as search engines start integrating this technology, you're going to lose that traffic. That traffic is just going to go away. Branded search is probably going to be okay, but unbranded search is not so much. And there's three things in general you should be focusing on as marketers if you care about that impact on your business. Number one is your brand. Right? Your brand and the ability for people to remember who you are and find you by hook or by crook is the most important thing that you can build. Right? We've been saying this for years, and we've been doing this, podcasting and stuff as part of that for 17 years now. But it's a point now where the machines, and particularly the large technology companies, have decided they would like to send us less traffic and keep more of it for themselves. And the only way around that is to get people to search for us specifically, and that means our brand. Second is have some kind of publication that you own, something that is yours that others can't take away from you. So email newsletters is one of my favorite. Text messaging lists, maybe some other form of publication. There are companies that do very well with boutique print. But you need to have some kind of method of reaching people that is not intermediated by a machine. Email is one of those the last things that's available that there's still very little between you and the reader. Compare that to social media, compare that now to search, etc. And the third thing that you need to have is some kind of community. Some kind of community, ideally that is hybrid, that is in real life, like we're all sitting here today, or also in virtual space. So this is a Slack group that we run, it's called Analytics for Marketers. There are a gazillion and a half different Discord servers that you can join that have these communities. These communities are important because they're disambiguated. Right? There's no machine arbitrating what you see. It's you just jump into them, and it's kind of like 2007 Twitter. It's just what's happening as it's happening. It's a bit of a fire hose in some of these communities, but it's essential. So, finally, who's going to lose their jobs? Well, the Brookings Institute said AI is going to take away tasks, but not jobs. That's kind of true. That's kind of true. They said that mainly to avert panic. But the reality is that if you are a marketer who's skilled with AI, or any profession who's skilled with AI, you will replace a marketer who is not. Any profession who is not competent at AI is an endangered species because of the speed at which these tools are proliferating. How is this going to cost jobs? If you think about someone's workday, right, a bunch of tasks that are broken out over time, and you say, well, how much of this can I automate? How much of this can I have individual tasks turned over to machines? What's left then is the chunks here that were not automated. Right? So in a progressive company will say, well, let's retrain people and fill up those time slots. A regressive company is going to say, let's add that block of free time and get rid of a seat, right, and save some money. So depending on the kind of company that you work for, that will depend on whether AI consumes jobs or not. But that's kind of where this stuff is going. So that is the end of this time slot. Any questions?
So what does being trained for AI mean? Like, what does that really look like?
In what sense?
What's up? I'm going to be a marketer who's AI enabled.
Mm-hmm. So for a marketer who is AI enabled, it is learning how to use the various tools like ChatGPT or GoCharlie or Jasper, any of these tools that can do content creation. It is learning how to use generative image AI like DALL-E 2 or Stable Diffusion to create imagery. It is learning the landscape of what the tools are that are out there, that capabilities they have, things like transcription and translation, and then figuring out how you apply those tools within your work. So, you know, the obvious things for like text generation is, okay, I can write content a lot faster now. Right? I can have machines generate first drafts, but I can also have it do summarization and access a lot more information. I can have machines summarize and identify key points. You know, boil down enormous amounts of text into very, very small chunks that I can make use of better. A big portion will be in customer service and customer care, where you can have these models now that can have intelligible conversations with people and deploy them so that customers not only get the assistance they're looking for, but also don't feel like they're talking to a moron. You first, then.
Have you checked out Snipped, the podcast app yet? It's got some AI built into it that will gather things. And then second question is, how has this impacted your own workflow between Marketing Over Coffee and Almost Timely? I've been subscribing a long time.
Well, thank you. I've heard Snipped. I've tried out Descript. Descript is also a fantastic tool that it does a lot of stuff with like voice synthesis, where you can have it trim out stop words and filler and stuff, and sound more like NPR and less like you're drunk, which is good. And in terms of how I use this, a lot of it is for generation, a lot of it is, but much more summarization. Yeah. So, like when I write a newsletter, very often I'm in the car or I'm walking the dog or something like that, and I have a bunch of stuff that I want to get out of my head, but it's not coherent. And so feeding the first draft, which is probably 8 or 9 pages of rambling, and then saying, okay, summarize, find the key points, and then I can go back and refine that and write that. That improves the output. It doesn't necessarily speed it up, but it improves the quality of the output. And again, that's where I think these tools, particularly the text tools, are really powerful, is improving the quality of output. Transcripts are a gold mine. When you think about, Bill Marriott was famous for this years and years ago. He was the CEO of Marriott Corporation. He used to blog fairly regularly on the Marriott blog. He's never set pen to paper. What he has been doing for over a decade is leaving voicemails to his marketing department of whatever's on his mind, and then someone ghostwrites that. Well, now you don't need to have a staff of people to do that. You can have machines do a lot of that. When you look at some of the more prolific content creators out there, the folks who have several million folks on their YouTube channels and things, a lot of their teamwork is just admin, right? It's just people following somebody around with a camera, editing, making all these short clips and stuff. And a lot of the newer content engines now can do that automatically, where you can say, okay, take this video and now make a square video format, make a clip of this, and so on. And with the text-based understanding of the models, they can say, okay, these are the 5 snippets that have the most relevant points. Let's clip those out and turn them into something. I believe Descript allows you to do that.
Yeah, Snipped is an app that, from the user's perspective, if you're listening to the podcast, you can have it do 3 shows. I think it's free. Snipped may not itself be free, but the 3 shows per day of asking it to generate, and it will come back with podcast chapters as well as transcript, and you can make clips inside of it based on that transcript and then share them.
Yeah, exactly.
My question was kind of covered. I noticed when you talked about having your own properties and mentioning emails, you didn't mention a blog or a website.
I didn't, and I didn't mention a blog or a website because I'm still figuring out how we can avoid feeding the models all of our stuff and giving all of our content away for free, that they then use to not send us any traffic, because it kind of, a large language model breaks the agreement we have sort of implicitly with a service like Google. We make a ton of free content for Google, and Google in exchange sends us new customers. Mm-hmm. That's no longer true with these language models. So the question is, where do you put your best stuff? I would say your best stuff belongs in publications that directly benefit people who've agreed to sign up to hear from you. And then your less good stuff maybe goes on a blog or something like that.
Yeah. And I also wanted to mention that there are now tools that can summarize a YouTube video.
Oh yeah, GoCharlie is one of my favorites. You can give it like a 2-hour video and it'll spit out a nice synopsis. Really handy. Other questions? You first.
So how are the folks behind ChatGPT or these other things actually determining what they want to feed it? I mean, because it's only as good as what